You graduated from high school.
I graduated with high honors and I did very well on the SATs, and so a number of schools offered me scholarships, but Bryn Mawr College outside of Philadelphia offered me the whole tuition, room and board free of charge. So that is where I went.
And what year was that, Barbara?
I went to college in 1961. I was 17 years old. With respect to the work at college, I sort of felt as though the world opened up. And the reason for that was that all of the students were women, and I couldn't have told you then that I had noticed a difference between how teachers and professors treated young men and young women, but obviously I must have, because I noticed the difference. And there were no young men. And so the professors, male and female, were interested in us and what we were going to say and how we wrote our essays. And so that was just a delight. I just loved it. It was like I just felt I could blossom.
So at what point did you apply to law school?
I applied to law school when my youngest child entered the first grade. And during that time, there were several times presentations to school boards, and there were certain local lawyers who came to do that. And I thought several years before I went to law school that it would be something I would be interested in.
And after law school, did you have a plan?
I took a job in New London with the firm then of Greenberg and Hendel, and I started there doing research for them and started going to court when I was admitted in Connecticut.
Did you have contact with clients?
I did, almost immediately, yes.
And how did that go? Were they accepting of you?
They were, for the most part. There were occasional hiccups, I think, but nothing of the sort that you would expect to be clear, a demarcation, I don't want to have a woman.
Now, how long were you at Greenberg and Hendel?
I was with this firm for 3 years when it became Greenberg, Andrews and Quinn, and I became a partner relatively quickly. That's one of the nice parts about small firms. And then we grew a little. We had a few more associates. And I stayed with the firm of Greenberg, Andrews, and Quinn for 11 years before Lois and I left and formed our own firm.
And during that time, were you involved in other activities in the legal profession?
Well, I had been involved in the local bar association. I became president, I think, in '83 or '84. And began to work then with the Connecticut Bar Association in the House of Representatives and the Board of Governors. And in 1984, I was appointed an attorney trial referee, which are lawyers who hear certain civil cases that the court assigns to them.
You were involved in other committees and...
I was. I lectured a fair amount during those years on ethics and other matters. I was involved in, for I think a total of 27 years, in the Connecticut Bar Examining Committee, to which I was appointed in 1986. And in 1990, I was appointed the vice chair of the committee and also to the National Conference of Bar Examiners, the policy committee for the multi-state. And there were 8 of us from around the country who would meet 2 or 3 times a year to have discussions about what the drafters were doing and how all of those things were working nationally. And that was very interesting. I remained on that committee for 14 years.
So you became a judge.
Well, in 1993, I and a lawyer practicing in London were selected to serve as part-time judges of the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Court.
How long were you involved with that court?
I served on that court almost 4 years. It was very interesting because the 4 of us, and then ultimately a Native American was appointed to be the head judge, were involved in setting up a whole new court system, in thinking about what kinds of procedure does one use. And we also had input from the tribal council about what they wanted to have. In other words, how they viewed this in Indian country, if you will, as their court. So, for example, I was appointed to be the judge ordering small criminal kinds of things that the tribal court took care of, And there was a board of elders that decided what the punishment would be, and mostly it was what we would call restorative justice.
So tell us about your life as a judge. What have you done?
I began in the GA, the Geographical Area Court. The lower level criminal matters are handled, as you know. And that is where all new judges start, so that we learn how to do that constitutionally required business. I was in a GA for 9 months, and then I began at the special docket in Middletown, the child protection session for the trial statewide of termination of parental rights cases, and I was there for 4 years. And then I received an assignment on a civil jury in New Britain, and I tried a lot of jury cases. So I did that for the next 2.5 years, perhaps, and then I received an assignment to the complex litigation docket. And in the midst of that, while I was on that docket, I received a call from the chief court administrator at that time, Judge Pellegrino, about whether or not I would serve as the chief administrative judge for juvenile matters. And that was a sort of a cognitive dislocation. Yes, I knew about juvenile. I'd been in it for a good number of years, but my head was sort of at that point, intellectually and otherwise, in civil matters and the levels of research and work that one does in them. But I did accept that position, and in July of 2005, I became the chief administrative judge for juvenile matters in the state.
How long did you do that job, chief administrative judge for juvenile matters?
It was about two years, I think, a little, maybe 2.5 years, when we had a change in the person who was the chief judge, a chief justice, and then Governor Rell nominated Chase Rogers to take that position. And I had not known Judge Rogers until she came to the child protection session in Middletown, and I was her presiding judge for a year. She then asked me to be the deputy chief court administrator. Judge Lavery was the chief court administrator and was going to retire in the fall. And so that summer I began to work in the Supreme Court in Hartford as the deputy chief court administrator and begin to understand what the position was all about.
And you were the first woman
Yes, I was
in that
the
role.
first woman to have been appointed to that role.
How long did you serve as the chief court administrator?
7 years all told.
And you have been back to being a courtroom judge since that time.
That's right. So I hear some general civil cases, some zoning cases, and also some family cases. There is another specialty docket, statewide docket in Middletown for the trial of custody cases from all over the state called the Regional Family Trial Docket, and I hear cases from that docket. I do pretrials and mediations, which I enjoy. So it keeps me occupied, and I very much am happy to be back doing that.